They said she was exaggerating, laughed off her confirmed engagement count like it belonged in a novel. Then one of the Marine generals stepped out of line and struck her across the face in front of the entire ethics panel. She didn't react. No flinch, no protest, not even a raised tone, because that day she chose silence. But 3 nights later, when both generals entered her combat evaluation exercise, still joking about the number they claimed she invented, she acted without pause. She neutralized them both by the book, in full view, with the calm precision of a Tier 1 operator. Before we show you the exact moment silence became accountability, and how the number they mocked ended 2 decorated careers, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story isn't about revenge. It's about records and the woman who let them speak. The windows were darkened, not for secrecy, but to eliminate distraction. Inside the briefing chamber of the Eastern Combat Doctrine Wing at Marine Corps Base Quantico, the air felt compressed by rank alone. No devices, no notepads, just pressed uniforms forming a wide arc around a central table. Every seat occupied by someone who'd seen live combat within the last year and a half. Navy, Marines, Joint Command, an inter-service review on ethical conduct in theater. At the far end sat 2 men whose ribbons spanned their chests, Major General Clayton Rowe and Lieutenant General Aaron Whitlock. Both Marines, both highly decorated, both long removed from field command, yet still shaping the atmosphere wherever they stood. At the opposite end stood Lieutenant Commander Kaya Mercer, Naval Special Warfare. Late 30s, straight-backed, hands loosely clasped behind her. Her uniform was immaculate, but nothing about her posture demanded attention. It simply drew it in. She had been invited, not ordered, to brief. Today's overview addresses fire zone triage in civilian-dense sectors, she said evenly, almost conversational. Specifically, rules of engagement during infrastructure-denied clearance operations. The words landed clean, no theatrics, no filler, no ego, just doctrine refined by experience. A few nods traveled the room. Several colonels leaned forward. Others glanced at the trident beneath her collar bar. One Marine captain murmured something about blackout liaison to the officer beside him, who stiffened instantly. But General Rowe didn't nod. He leaned back, arms crossed, lips tight, as if chewing on something unwelcome. "Lieutenant Commander Mercer," he cut in smoothly. "You're listed as a field evaluator here, not a primary operator. Is that correct?" Heads turned. Kaya didn't blink. "I serve as both, sir. Embedded operational advisory." Whitlock interjected before she could expand. "So which is it exactly? You write assessments, or do you pull triggers?" The room tightened. Her reply was flat. "Both, sir, depending on the phase." Whitlock shared a grin with Rowe. Rowe leaned forward, elbows on the table. "And how many targets would you say you've personally neutralized?" The phrasing was deliberate. Kaya met his stare. 61. The number didn't echo. It fell. Hard. Someone cleared their throat. Another officer exhaled sharply. Whitlock lifted an eyebrow. "Say that again." "Confirmed?" "Confirmed," she said. 61 across 5 regions over a 12-year span. She didn't name the regions. She didn't have to. A Marine colonel beside her shifted, as if trying to realign his spine. Rowe leaned back slowly, expression now unreadable. "That's a very precise number." "It's documented in the record, General," he smiled thinly. "No doubt," he said. "Only issue is those records are sealed." Rourke inclined his head once. "Accurate. Classification remains Tier 4. He paused, then let out a quiet, humorless breath. 61, he repeated. "Right. And I assume every one of them had it coming." She gave no reply. Keller's voice cut through the stillness. "Yeah." He muttered, not really addressing anyone, letting the word linger with lazy venom. "That's a lie, not shouted, not challenged, just stated, casually cruel." The room locked up again. No one corrected him, no one pushed back, and Arden Cross didn't react. She simply brought her hands together on the table and waited for whatever came next. Nothing did. Only the weight of a number no one wanted to believe, and no one was brave enough to verify. The silence didn't end naturally. It was torn open. General Rask leaned sideways in his chair, one elbow draped over the armrest, the posture of a man who had decided ownership of the room had shifted. Let's take a breath, he said evenly, almost kindly. Numbers like that don't appear out of thin air. Cross didn't move. Her gaze stayed steady. Her breathing never changed. Keller clicked his pen against the tabletop. 61, he said again, quieter now, as if testing the word. That's ambitious. A few officers adjusted in their seats, not in agreement, not in protest, just enough movement to signal discomfort without consequence. Rask scanned the table. Anyone here ever seen a verified count above 40 without a command citation attached? No response. Didn't think so, he continued. Because when figures climb that high, they stop being operational and start being theatrical. His eyes returned to Cross. So tell me, Commander, are we discussing confirmed engagements, or are we discussing situations that felt dangerous and were written up later? Her answer came level and precise. Confirmed, sir. Dual source verification. Keller let out a soft laugh, not loud, not sharp, just enough to sour the air. Cinema, he muttered. That shifted Rask forward in his seat, closer now. This is a professional panel, he said. We don't pad records here, we don't grandstand, and we don't allow consultants to reshape reality because it reads better. Cross didn't raise her voice. I'm not here to impress anyone. No, Keller interrupted. You're here to sell a narrative. She turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge him. I'm here to answer the questions put to me. Then answer this one plainly, Rask said. How many of those 61 can you personally prove you fired the shot on? The wording was careful. A snare dressed up as clarification. All of them, she said. A Marine colonel farther down the table drew in a sharp breath, then stopped, eyes darting toward the generals as if checking whether reaction was allowed. Keller pushed his chair back a few inches, boots whispering against the floor. That's remarkable, he said, wearing a thin smile. Because I've spent my entire career watching people double their numbers just to sound capable. His gaze moved over her slowly, assessing, measuring. And you don't strike me as remarkable. The phrase lingered in the air. Cale felt it settle, not as anger, not as fear, but as clarity. This wasn't doubt anymore. It was something older, sharper, the kind of hostility that didn't care about truth, only about silence. The data is verified, she replied evenly, archived at the time of execution, reviewed, locked down. Rourke scoffed. Convenient. General Ashcroft leaned back in his chair, arms crossing slowly. You know what I think, he said. I think you're inflating figures because no one in this room has the clearance to challenge you. The air tightened. He cocked his head, eyes thinning. So what does that make you? No one answered. Then Rourke finished it. A lying whore. The word wasn't hurled. It was set down deliberately, like it had always belonged on the table. Several officers fixed their eyes forward. One stared at his clasped hands. Another swallowed and stayed silent. Cale didn't move. She didn't stiffen or recoil or draw herself up. She simply met Rourke's stare and said, Those numbers aren't an assertion, sir. They're a record. That calm, controlled, immovable didn't soothe them. It aggravated them. Rourke stood. In a single step, the boundary between command and cruelty dissolved. The room wasn't just silent. It was complicit. Commander Elias Maddox remained frozen as General Rourke closed the distance. His boots made no sound against the carpet, but his posture spoke clearly. He didn't approach like a man seeking discussion. He moved like someone convinced authority only ever flowed downward. You see, he said lightly, we allow experts at this table, analysts, advisors, not performers. He stopped inches from her, close enough that a junior officer would have retreated on instinct. She didn't. Now, Rourke continued, voice dropping, eyes tightening, do you want to try that figure again? Something believable, something that doesn't turn this entire facility into a joke. Behind him, General Ashcroft observed, arms still crossed, a faint smile hovering just short of his eyes. Several colonels remained rigid, disciplined, tension etched deep into their brows. No one intervened. Cale's voice, when she spoke, was steady and low. I stand by the number, sir. He didn't respond. He didn't hesitate. His hand struck her cheek, open-palmed, immediate. No warning, no build-up. Just the sharp crack of skin against skin and a sudden shift in the room's gravity. It wasn't loud. It was definitive. The sound stole the breath from everyone present, locking them in place. Time didn't freeze. It simply slowed, long enough for every person there to understand exactly what they had witnessed. Kale didn't stumble. Her head turned slightly with the blow, her chin dipping for a brief moment. Then she brought it back, slow, controlled, and straightened her spine. Her hands stayed down. Her footing never changed. She lifted her fingers once, pressed them lightly to her jaw, then let her arm fall back to her side. No reaction, no words, nothing given that hadn't already been taken. She met Rourke's eyes without blinking. "Session adjourned," she said evenly. "I'll submit a summary to Joint Command." Then she turned with precision and walked out. No one tried to stop her. The door closed behind her with a sharp, final click, more punctuation than drama, an ending rather than a spectacle. Inside the room, Rourke slowly lowered his hand, as if the tension had finally reached him all at once. The grin had vanished, but there was no embarrassment on his face, just stillness. Calder was the first to break the silence, clearing his throat. "She won't submit anything," he muttered. "You saw it. She knows, she crossed the boundary, cooked the number." No one replied, no one laughed, not now. A junior officer near the back quietly gathered his notebook and stood. Another followed him moments later. Neither spoke, neither glanced at Rourke. They left because something had shifted in the room, even if they couldn't yet name it. The incident never traveled through formal channels. It didn't have to. By the time the afternoon heat settled over the eastern courtyard at Pendleton, 3 versions of the story were already moving through the base. One claimed Commander Vale froze and fled, humiliated. Another said she muttered something sharp before storming out. A third insisted she'd been stunned silent while General Rourke smoothly reclaimed control before things unraveled. None of it was accurate, but every version carried the same message. She backed down in the officers' mess. 2 junior colonels crossed paths near the coffee urn. "She just stood there and took it," one said quietly. "Didn't even flinch." The other snorted. "Thought recon types didn't crack. Maybe she's not what they say." Near the logistics annex, Calder and Rourke lingered in the shade of the southern breezeway, their voices low and amused. "You saw how she collapsed," Rourke said, rolling a toothpick between his teeth like a cigar. "No pushback, no argument, all posture and nothing underneath." Calder laughed softly. 61 confirmed. I've heard more believable stories from a corporal nursing a hangover." Neither of them noticed Captain Hale standing across the courtyard. Navy? Older. Career intelligence, currently assigned as a joint liaison. He hadn't spoken during the session. He hadn't reacted either. But now he was watching, and he knew exactly who Alara Vale was. That night, in a dim corridor off the operations wing, Vale moved alone with a clipboard tucked under her arm, her uniform jacket folded neatly over her hand. She passed the command board without slowing, then slipped into the evaluation sign-out office. Her voice stayed level. She never looked back. "Authorization request," she said to the sergeant on duty. "Facility 12 Bravo, Combat Evaluation Bay, midnight window." The sergeant blinked. "Yes, ma'am. Will you need participant intake forms?" "I'll upload them within the hour." He handed over the clipboard. She signed with steady strokes, closed it, and returned it. 30 minutes later, a quiet notification appeared on a limited distribution list. 2 Marine generals, 3 officers from the earlier session, 1 administrative secretary. Subject: Joint Inter-Service Combat Credibility Drill Observer Access requested. It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't marked urgent. It simply existed in the system. Logged. In the administrative wing nearby, Captain Voss entered a secure side room where 2 sealed binders were stored behind a coded cabinet. He entered the passphrase, removed 1 volume, and flipped to a file marked NSW Shadow Operations, Tier 3 Review Access Only. He stopped at a single name. Vale, Alara, no photograph. No operational summary. Only heavy redactions, followed by 2 unassuming words at the bottom of the page: credibility confirmed. He shut the folder because whatever the brass believed they'd smothered beneath layers of quiet, they misunderstood one thing. Silence wasn't the grave. It was the spark. The invitation didn't read like a snare. It read like procedure. By 0700 the following morning, the message sat in both General Rawlins's and General Keene's inboxes. Ordinary subject line, routine classification header, routed through joint ethics coordination. Subject, operational credibility review, demonstration. Observer participation requested. Attached was a single-page PDF. Time, 0000 hours. Location, Facility 12 Bravo, Combat Assessment Bay. Purpose, tier-verified reflex evaluation for performance validation. At the bottom, clean and precise, was the signature block. Liaison Officer LCDRA Saren, Naval Special Warfare, Clearance Tier 4. Keene skimmed it during breakfast. Rawlins glanced at it between briefings. Neither showed much interest. Probably her way of keeping up appearances, Elias Rawlins said later that afternoon, leaning back in his chair. Have us watch her crawl through an obstacle lane and prove she's still relevant. Keene shrugged. Let her burn the energy. She's not going to try anything inside a federal facility. No, Rawlins agreed. She'll jog around some markers and hope someone applauds. They laughed. Both missed the observer roster, Marine instructors, 2 Navy ethics adjudicators, a JAG advisor, and a legal liaison captain from ONI. Quiet titles. Paperback authority. In the communications corridor, Area Saren uploaded her waiver packet at the operations console. It listed every participant, signed consent forms, a protocol-approved demonstration outline, acknowledgement of restricted tactics, internal review authorization. No one challenged it. No one delayed the request because nothing about it violated policy. It moved perfectly within it by 1800 hours, murmurs traveled, not official, not loud, just enough. They're actually showing up, a lieutenant whispered near the mess hall doors. Keene and Rawlins confirmed, full fatigues, observer tier. What kind of drill? No idea. Reflex certification, apparently. Since when do generals certify, the questions didn't matter. By then, the most volatile factor was already present, expectation. On a base like Quantico, nobody says it aloud. But everyone notices who enters a scenario assuming victory and who steps in without needing it. At 22:30, Area Saren changed in the dim locker room behind Facility 12 Bravo. No audience. No idle chatter. Just the muted rustle of gear and the measured rhythm of breathing through a system designed to wait. She checked her gloves, adjusted her vest, laced her boots. Then she crossed to the control panel and keyed herself in. High in the observation tower, Captain Rowan Hale adjusted his headset. He carried no clipboard, no notes, only the clearance to observe. A young Marine leaned close. Is this supposed to be a show? Hale didn't look away from the glass. No, he said. It's a recalibration. Below, the entry gate slid open and Generals Rawlins and Keene stepped inside, smiling. The lighting in Facility 12 Bravo wasn't harsh white. It was infrared washed red, designed for close-quarters simulation under limited visibility. The space felt hollowed, as if the air itself had been thinned. Shadows twitched with motion that hadn't yet started. At the center grid stood Lieutenant Commander Area Saren alone. No clipboard, no briefing cadence, just a fitted black tactical uniform, no insignia, no excess armor, only controlled stillness. Her braid was secured beneath a mesh cap, gloves tight, breathing even. Her gaze never lifted to the observation deck. The intercom snapped alive. Scenario live. Evaluation perimeter green. In the tower, Captain Hale remained motionless. He didn't need to move. He had already watched Rawlins and Keene enter with easy grins, joking with a junior officer who dared to ask what the rules were. They stood at the far boundary of the grid now, wrapped in training fatigues, sleeves shoved up, heads bare, practice carbines hanging casually across their backs. So this is where we officially embarrass ourselves, Ryder muttered to the room. Calder cracked a sharp grin. Relax, if she body slams us, we'll submit a wellness report. One of the tower instructors rubbed his face. Unbelievable. The comm unit buzzed again. Vex's voice cut in, measured even. This evaluation follows Joint Command reflex parameters. 2 phases, all subjects have signed provisional clearance. She turned to face them, her expression didn't shift. Phase 1. Adaptive response under simulated combat uncertainty. Ryder snorted. Yeah, we've done this 100 times. Vex didn't answer. She tapped the control once. Initiate. The grid reacted instantly. Panels slid open with a pneumatic sigh. Dense fog rolled out from the seams. Synthetic vapor flooded the space. Temperature dipped 3 degrees. Sound dampeners activated. Visibility collapsed to 5 feet. Calder's grin widened. "Your move, legend," he called back over his shoulder. "All right, let's see if the story holds." He never finished. She was already there. Low, fast, left side. His rifle came up too late. She knocked it aside with her forearm, spun behind him, threaded her elbow through the sling, and yanked his arm tight across his throat like a steel bar. One rotation, one impact, one body down. The thud barely pierced the steady hiss of fog. Calder neutralized. Her voice echoed calmly through the system. Before Ryder could fully pivot, she was airborne, not leaping but shifting. Her legs cinched once around his center line. Momentum carried them into a smooth slide. She landed above him, glove locked beneath his jaw. Angle severed before his elbow even twitched. She held him for exactly 1 second, long enough for the tower's infrared tracker to burn a glowing X across his chest. Ryder neutralized. Silence followed.